G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you of course by Crowcast. Another big week in the AFL, lots to talk about with the Crows. We've got the mid-season draft coming up of course, a few selection worries and injury problems at the Crows, and also our deep dive into South Australian draft hopeful Arlo Draper. So after that ridiculous intro that I completely stuffed up, let's get right into it, shall we? Hello, and welcome everyone to another edition of Crowcast Tuesday Night Live. Hopefully everyone's warm and safe if you're listening to us from Victoria, of course. I hope you're all well over there, and all the very best to everyone listening to us in Victoria. Peter, how are you?
Very well, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on again this week, and look forward to another 45 minutes or so of good Crows footy chat.
Just set the expectation early there, Pete, didn't you?
Well, if we drift to an hour, look, who are we to argue? Yeah,
well, there's a bit to unpack tonight, but we'll zip through it. Of course, g'day to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube and Twitch. Of course, if you want to get around us on Discord, head to the Crowcast YouTube channel. There's a nice little video on how to get amongst us on Discord. It's great, not only on live streams, but also during the week and on game day as well. There's some fantastic chat there, all good-natured and some pretty good comments going on. Also, if you are in Discord, don't forget about our suggestion box, and also if you want to support us, there's plenty of instructions in the support channel on how you can go about doing that. All that out of the way, Peter, what do you think about the weekend, first of all?
Oh, look, I was, as I have been all year, pretty positive about the game, and I think that it's very, very easy when you have such an incredible game against the D's the week before, and we had that epic last quarter.
Yeah.
And then from that epic last quarter, we launched straight into the quarter that we saw in the first quarter on Sunday. And I know that, and this is not a criticism of fans generally, because we're all the same. At quarter time, we're suddenly just taking a sneaky look at the AFL ladder, thinking, we're just got to. Actually, if we just we're going to roll Richmond today, and if we just, we're only percentage in a game outside of it, maybe we could make the eight. And it's a natural thing. It's a perfectly natural thing. And but then what happens is that you get brought back with a thud to the fact that we are a rebuilding team. But we see enough. I think we've certainly seen enough this year that we can be very, very positive. And we're within 9. I mean that. Let me just go back to Richmond themselves. I mean, that was a year game for them. I mean, they'd lost that game. They're struggling to make the 8, and
100%.
They rushed back some big name players for that game. They'd penciled that in. That was a must win. And so you're up against a team like Richmond in a must win game for them, and you're only 9 points down into the last quarter.
That's right.
I think it's a great performance.
And look, the first quarter showed that teams don't have to be very far off for us to be able to take advantage of it at the moment. Melbourne, I think the previous week, played a little bit like millionaires and got found out. Richmond were in danger of doing the same, but were able to steady the ship beforehand. But we're not far off. Just feeding back in through your headphones there, Pete.
Sorry.
You're right. So, we're not far off the mark, and it's just a matter of getting games into players, in my opinion. To my mind, watching us against Richmond, the only thing that was really missing was about 30 games more experience.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's some really good performances from the kids that played well. And in as I said, it was a high pressure game. It was a must win game. And so even I look at the experience that Riley got going into the ruck in that last quarter. I mean, when there was only 9 points of difference and the match was on the line, I love the fact that he was in the ruck.
Yeah.
Now, he got, they won the next couple of clearances and he got beaten. Well, it's okay. He's an 18-year-old kid who's played 5 games.
Exactly.
That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get that kind of experience into the kids.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve at the moment. And, lots to like. Look, there's a few people on the stage at the moment. I'm not sure whether you're using headphones or speakers there, Pete, but it is feeding back a little bit. I don't know whether you need to just move the mic away a little bit.
Is that better? Better?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Sorry. I don't know what was causing it.
Look, we've got eight people in the live studio there, so if anyone wants to get on and have their say, of course, Tuesday night's all about interaction. We love to have people on deck. We had a few on Sunday night, and it's always great to hear from you. So don't be shy, stick your virtual hand up, and we'll get you on during the course of the show. Now, Peter, let's just start off with some injury news. And, of course, young Sam Berry looks like he's going to be out for the week, obviously with concussion. They are still saying that he's subject to the clinical assessment, so you would think that he wouldn't be up this week.
No, he'll be out in accordance with the protocols. Yep. So there'll be no way that he'll play this week. And he's a young kid in his first year. They're not going to mess with him.
Do you know, I actually thought he might have been due a break anyway. It's a big stretch that he's played since round one as a draftee. He's come in and hit the ground running, played all the pre-season games, played every round this season basically, so he probably will benefit, I think, from having a little rest.
I think so.
I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted the sore head, but there you go. Daniel Tarley is a bit of a worry. Still got soreness. I'm starting to wonder whether we actually will see Daniel back this year, Pete.
Well, it's looking like we're not, because he's going to need, probably 2 to 4 weeks in the twos, even if he gets back in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to see him at best until the last couple of 2 or 3 rounds, I think. Yeah. That's on a good case scenario.
Yeah. Marky's saying in the chat, apparently Talia might be in soon. Well, according to the website and the report out today, he's had another setback. He's still suffering from soreness, so don't think so. Lockie Murphy, better news. Good progress from his syndesmosis injury, of course. He's out of the moon boot and looking to commence running on the treadmill at least next week. So, but again, I still think he's probably 6 weeks at least, you'd think?
I can't, and again, all of these players, you're tacking another couple of weeks at least onto that to get themselves match fit for AFL football. Because none of those guys are the kind of guys that, they're not like a Cochin where you're saying, right, you're straight back in. Yeah,
that's right. Tommy Lynch still in a similar time frame to Murphy by the looks of it. Lockie Gallant begins training again with the group this week, which is good. After that, I don't know what he stuck his finger in, but he made a bloody mess of it, whatever he did. It was a tendon rupture. Well, I've had a tendon rupture myself just by a indoor cricket ball hitting the end of the finger, and it carries on for a while. So I'm not surprised he's been out for a few, but good to see him back on deck. Maddie Crouch, obviously recuperating after groin surgery. So look, not much has changed apart from the addition of Sam Berry into that onto that injury list, and he'll only be short term. Of course, we got the bye coming up too in a couple of weeks. So aside from the known injuries, it looks like a full list. No other injuries sustained from the Richmond game. So that leads us into a quick chat about selection, Peter. I didn't mind the balance actually against Richmond. But coming up against Collingwood this week, I just wonder whether they might have a think about Nick Murray's position.
Yeah, I think that they might, and because there's just not the and particularly also Grundy's now is out as well.
Yeah.
Not that Murray plays in the ruck, but it's another tool that they're going to have to cover, and so you would think that they'll be going relatively mobile forward line. So I think that Nick might be in a little bit of trouble there, just for matchups.
Yep.
So he may well be one to make way, and you've got obviously Will Hamill, who's looking to push back in the side. Andrew McPherson, another probably best player for the Sandful.
Yep.
So he, I think, would be pushing as well. So, but I think that probably on balance that they'll give that to Hamill. And the other one, of course, is Berry. I really hope they bring Ronan O'Connor back in for Sam Berry as a like-for-like swap.
Yeah.
I think Ronan had another pretty decent game. I think he had 21 odd possessions, a few clearances, and 6 or 7 tackles as he usually does. And so he's a kid for me that has done nothing wrong at all, had been in good form, and I don't think he was treated particularly well. But, he obviously went back and still played pretty well on Saturday. So I would really like to see him recalled.
Well, and that's on the back of a bit of a disjointed fortnight too. You only played half a game against West Coast and then had a medical sub spot that, I guess there's a couple of ones. Do we see any possibility of Josh Worrell getting a run?
I'd love Josh Worrell to get a run, but as always, we have to try and fit him in. I don't know. I didn't hear the rap on Sunday, but I was really disappointed in Chase's game. I thought he had a poor game. And, so whether they allow him to continue and to try and get him settled in that role will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
So, but for me, he's one that could easily come out. Now, the other one that I think is probably possibly under the gun would be Shane Mcadam.
Yes.
He's had a couple of disappointing games. So
well, that's what I'm wondering about Worrell, because Worrell can play up forward as well, and I just wonder whether they might try and sneak him in as a bit of a swing man. It's a good opportunity against a lesser opposition. He's certainly, his form may have tapered somewhat, but he's had a good start to the season overall, and probably been unlucky a couple of times just with matchups and team balance not to get a run. I'd really like to see them sneak him in for a game or two before the bye. And I think we've got an opportunity. Mcadam's giving us absolutely nothing at the moment and needs to go back to the twos to recapture not only his offensive form but also his defensive work as well. And maybe in the absence of any other real medium-size player, maybe Josh Worrell's worth sticking in. Pete, the other one, or there's a couple. David Mckay showed that he'd played his one good game for the season against Melbourne. I thought he was terrible against Richmond. But I know that they'd be loath to drop him. But Lockie Scholl looks a bit tired and sore to me as well, and I just wonder whether they might consider giving him a bit of a rest.
There's a few, I think, that just look a little bit sore.
Yeah.
And he's certainly one of them. So I guess then if you want to rest Lockie Scholl, look, really for me, the only guys that are performing at a level that you think could potentially come in would be McPherson, Hamill off the sub bench.
Yeah.
O'Connor, Haitley, and Worrell. So they're really the only ones you would think were in any kind of position to push the selection.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite. Maybe whether you could perhaps give Haitley a run in Scholl's position, perhaps giving a little bit of outside time, which he seems to appreciate. That's a potential, I think.
Yeah. The chat's asking who we play on Degoy. Joe Mack said Brown. I'd be inclined to run Andy McPherson with him if he does get a run first up. I think Degoy might be a little bit strong for Brown aerially. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think that probably Jacob would get first go at Degoy. It's just a little bit better matchup, I think, and they tend to get any we seem to give Jake the job on any of the opposition's, what you would call star, medium-ish sort of forward. So he seems to be the go-to defender. So I would think Jake Kelly would be on to go.
Yeah. So, interesting. I think they were right to stick basically with the 22 that beat Melbourne. But like you, I just observed a little bit of tiredness from some of our younger blokes. And it might just be an opportunity. We've got Collingwood and then who else is it? St Kilda after that, maybe. I think we've got a couple of games that are not against top 4 teams, which is handy, but an opportunity just to sneak a couple in before the bye. And I really would like to see Josh Worrell get a run. I think he's deserved it.
Yeah.
And I reckon
there we say body of work.
Yeah, the old Rising Star body of work nomination. Right. So, anything else about selection? I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, I think that pretty much covers it. And I think I think we've sort of run through the guys that are potentially knocking on the door and the guys that could possibly come out. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. I think it'll come from that group of people.
Yeah, I think so. Now, as mentioned earlier, we've got 8 people in the live studio audience there. So if any one of you guys wants to come in and have your say about selection or non-selection or anything else to do with what we're talking about or anything really, stick your hand up and we'll get you on board. And you've seen from previous streams how easy it is to get on board and have a bit of a chat. Now, Peter, I thought, we've got the mid-season draft coming up this week, which is a bit of an interesting aside. Now, I must admit, I haven't really been across a lot of what's going on, but I thought I'd just get your thoughts on what I think our need might be before we actually look at individuals.
Yeah, I'm not a great fan of. I mean, I see that we've nominated 1 pick, so we've only got 1 pick in this, and I don't think our need is another, relatively average, hard-trying midfielder. I really don't. So
that's Oliver Davis you're talking about there in particular.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be wanting to. Now I think that we've got him over here and we're playing him in the sample team, so that all the arrows point to us taking him. For me, I would think this should be a bit of a free hit. I think we should be looking at a development player, and so I would like us to say, let's just take a big ruckman. There's about 4 or 5 of them.
Yes.
In around about the top 20 in this draft.
And they're in high demand too, actually.
Yep. I would like to see us take a big ruckman, and in particular, I don't think of the guy's name, but there's a guy who's got a volleyball background, and he's about 210 centimetres and 104 kilos.
Yeah, right.
And he's massive.
Small.
He's got a Russian name, and Alex.
Oh, that's that. Yeah. Let me find it. I had it just there a minute ago, and I've lost it. But yeah,
I had it as well, but the device I was using, I think, was causing the feedback, so I've killed it.
Alex Murkoff.
That's the one.
Yeah, the Suns are quite keen.
210 centimetres, 104 kilos, Project Ruckman. He played in a VFL game a couple of weeks ago and got something like 38 hit-outs.
Yeah, right.
So I'd like to say, look, we don't need to be. This is not the time for trying to just put more average players on our list. I think this is a time to say a bit of a free hit. Who's somebody that we can grab that we can actually look to as a project? Put them at the bottom of the list and just say, go out in the SNFL and start playing some football and see what you can do.
Yeah. The only other lad that I would consider looking at is the lad from Sturt, who's very quick, Johnson. I know there's a bit of sorry,
Ash Johnson.
Ash Johnson, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like we might be a little bit one pace. The worry, of course, is that you bring a lad in like that, he might take 6 months to acclimatise and you get no value out of him. But I don't know. I reckon if he doesn't get picked up, he might actually go sneaky late in the national draft at the end of the year. Hadn't had a bad season. So there's a bit there. Look, personally, I don't mind the idea of a ruck, but I'm worried about Mcadam's spot, Pete, and I just wonder whether there's an option there to try and take some sort of a medium-sized forward with a bit of toe and can take a grab.
Yeah, I think there's a really, really strong option for us in the national draft coming up, and it's one of the kids I'm going to cover, and who I'm really excited about.
Yeah,
and I think I think you're absolutely spot on. Is one position. Mcadam is 25.
Yeah,
and I think that we need someone developing in that role, and I think so the kid that I would really like to pick up is Morgan Ferez he'll be in the national draft.
Yeah,
I think that we'll have an opportunity there, and I'll do a deep dive on him as the weeks go by.
Yeah,
but he's a kid who's 190. I think he's 191. He has got a huge leap, and he has got a massive, massive engine, and he can just run all day, and he's got absolute vice for hands.
That's exactly what we want in that spot. I'm starting to lose. I love what Mcadam can do. He's got talent to burn, and he's got some tricks that just off the charts. But his lack of consistency and he only had 3 handballs last week. You just can't get that sort of an output. And you could argue that he's fighting for lead ups with Tex and Fogarty. Well, he's just got to make that work. They've got to be able to make that work for him, and at the moment I just don't think it is working for him. Patrick in the chat wonders whether he might be a trade option. I think he is a trade option, to be perfectly honest with you. And unfortunately, it looks like Ben Davis isn't going to make it. Through partly his own performance, but probably also, I think, mismanagement by the club. He needed a run in the ones that he just didn't get, and I just think maybe the opportunity's passed for Ben.
Great. And I was a fan of his, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We both were, and I've been disappointed with how we treated that crop of picks through those years. Gallucci and those blokes, and he fits in amongst that as well. Ben Davis, I just think he was poorly served by the previous administration, and it's a shame. But I think we have to move on from him. And like you said, Ferris and one or two others. There's a Vic lad whose name escapes me that is pretty good in that space as well.
I'll give you a little just a little anecdote if I've got a quick minute.
Yeah, sure.
So I was around the school footy traps, as you know. I always get around the school footy games and chatting to a recruiter who was out there, and his words on Morgan Ferez were, he said when Morgs takes a mark, he said that ball hitting his hands makes a sound that's different to any other sound he's heard from a kid that age.
Yeah, right.
It's just a clunking smack sound that it just gets in the vice, and that's it. So anyway, I'll leave you with that one.
No, that's exciting, and that's the type of player that we need in that spot. Because not forgetting, Tex has only got a year or two left. It might be his last year this year, or he might have one more, but we are going to need someone to support Fogarty, assuming Fogarty keeps improving the way he appears to be, albeit slowly. But, if Fog doesn't come on and Tex, falls off the cliff, as he will eventually, potentially we've got no lead-up forwards. We've got no medium forwards. So
Tommy Lynch is in the twilight. So
yeah, definitely. So there is a need there. And that's why I'm a little bit. That's why I'm a little bit interested about Josh Worrell up forward.
Good point. Good point.
Because he's a good size. He attacks the ball well. He seems to read the play fairly well, and he has played footy up forward. So Yeah, who knows? I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. So, I mean, really, I don't like the mid-season draft, to be honest with you. I think it's. I don't know. I just think it's a waste. If teams can't manage their squads with a national draft and a pre-season draft, I don't see why they need a mid-season draft. No. And I don't think it really makes. No. I think it gives blokes. It takes blokes out of a system that is working for them.
Yep.
And puts them in a system where they won't get a look in, most likely, unless they're being drafted as a ready-made replacement, such as a ruckman for the Suns. And it almost does them a disservice, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
So we'll see how that translates. Now, when is that? That's tomorrow. Tomorrow, 6:30 Eastern time. So we'll have our questions answered in 24 hours' time, Peter. Now, no one on the chat is putting their hands up because they're all soft as butter, but that's right. If you do, anyone that's in the live show chat too, if you can duck down to the Crows chat channel and just drag those people up, there's a few people in there that are probably wondering where everyone else is. But if you are in the live studio audience and you do have a comment about selection or mid-season draft or anything else Crows related, then please put your hand up and we'll get around it. Now, there wasn't anywhere near as much tribunal argy-bargy this week as there was previous week.
Very quiet. Very quiet. Thankfully, none of our lads were incurred the wrath, and there didn't seem to be any real controversial ones either.
No. But I am in the throes, Peter, of putting together another little video that should hit YouTube probably Thursday. And it's highlighting incorrect disposal in the game between the Crows and the Tigers last week, Peter.
How bad was that? Oh my goodness me.
And I'm telling you, I'm probably just under 2/3 of the way through the vision, and I'm up to 17. And they're not iffies; they're definite. And there's a couple from of the Crows as well, but there's so far 17 examples of either blatant throws or incorrect disposal out of tackles where you couldn't class it as ball knocked free, and it's just absolutely disastrous. And I know I don't want to spend a hell of a lot of time on it, but Jesus Christ, it's hard to love the game when they umpire it like they did last week against us.
Yeah, and yet, we could just see it all coming, couldn't we, after what happened against Melbourne? It just seemed like it was just destined.
Yep.
So predictable.
Like you said, predictable. We get the rub of the green once every 30-odd years, and it's usually followed up by a couple of howlers, and Jesus, not for 1 minute am I saying that it costs us the game. But it makes the spectacle almost unwatchable, because it's so frustrating. You can't enjoy the football because the umpiring itself is killing it. And I don't know. Look, I know umpiring is a difficult thing, and I know that the rules are terribly infuriating in terms of being grey. But shit, some of them are just like, have you not actually ever played or watched a game of football before, umpire? Like, just no feel whatsoever.
No. And then just a couple of minutes later, they ping Ned McHenry for the, for the same thing. I mean, it's just outrageous.
It was horrific. And then the Murray deliberate, that made me laugh.
Oh my goodness.
That made me laugh. It's like, seriously, is that the square up? That's the square up. What the hell?
Do you know what this plays? It plays into your theory that AFL really is entertainment. It's theatre.
God, yeah.
And that was pure pantomime. They would have been just looking for Nick to have disposed the ball near the boundary line, and they would have been under instructions.
Yeah.
Run in and play that big deliberate. Yeah. And it would have absolute theatre. Pantomime it was.
Well, it's interesting hearing Razor Ray's thoughts. Razor Ray, one of our stalwarts who lives in the US, hearing his thoughts about the umpiring standard, and he made a very good point on the weekend that there's no other professional sport that I can think of that tolerates such disastrous officiating. If that level of officiating had occurred in an NFL game or in a Premier League soccer game, that those umpires would never umpire again. It just wouldn't be accepted. And yet with the AFL, it's not only tolerated, but they continually tweak rules, as you say, to orchestrate and manipulate the game to produce a product. They keep talking about product. The integrity of the competition should be the primary focus, but it seems that the television product is paramount, and the integrity of the sport is secondary. And it's sad. Umpiring's been an issue ever since I've been alive, and it always will be. But I think in the current day and age, there's never been, at least, like, you can cop an umpire making a bad decision on occasions, but the way the game is actually interpreted changes from week to week and moment to moment, and that's the most frustrating thing for me, because even 30-year football fans can hardly understand it at times. Anyway,
I'd like to know which international sporting body around the globe has a rules of the game committee. that meet. Who's the rules of the game committee in soccer? They wouldn't have much to do. They'd be at cobwebs around the desk, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know.
Sorry,
go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if I was the umpire that called that non-deliberate out of bounds call for Nick Murray against Melbourne, I'd be in the AFL's office today saying, why was I publicly humiliated?
100%.
And why was the umpire on the Jack Rewalt one? Why does he get off scot-free?
Yeah, that Jack Rewalt one was terrible. In terms of having a feel for the game and understanding what the player's doing, to allow a player to get tackled, to drop the ball onto the ground and then flail his arms back and basically fall back into the tackler, to fall for 2 or 3 different areas where he's clearly staged for a free, and to not pay the incorrect disposal at the very outset. That's 4 mistakes that umpire made in that one little moment. I mean, he shouldn't be umpiring this week.
No. It's outrageous.
Anyway, let's move on from that. We have a young man to talk about, Peter, and the stage is yours.
Thanks, mate. Well, our crowed to the draft, we're talking tonight about the third in the trio of South tall goal-kicking midfielders in Arlo Draper. Now, Arlo is, I can tell you, he has got quite a following. He's got, there's a lot of love out there amongst draft watchers for Arlo, and he is clearly, of the three, he's the one that would get the least recognition or publicity. We all talk Horn and Roberts. Arlo is just quietly going along and plying his trade. But the reason that he has got a lot of love and a lot of interest out there is that probably the description I hear the most about Arlo is intriguing. I think he's intriguing. And there's a reason for that, Fane. And when we talked about Horn and Roberts, we talked about the 2 different midfield families, didn't we? We talked about the Dusty Martin family, we talked about the Sam Walsh family.
Yeah.
Arlo Draper is a distant relative of the Dusty Martin family. Okay?
Yeah.
He's in the words of the immortal George Costanza.
Sorry.
You right?
Yep.
When George Costanza goes in and says, "Oh, I need something a little less expensive." So Arlo is the kid you're talking about.
That's a fantastic analogy. That's perfect.
You can't afford Horn, but there's a reason for that, Fang. He's very much an unfinished product. So he's not. But the thing about Arlo is that he is that kid who has burst away from the stoppage. Okay, so he has genuine speed around the stoppage.
Yep.
He has some real evasion tricks. He's got good disposal. He's a very, very good mark drifting towards goal. Kicks a lot of goals for a midfielder.
Yep.
And if you look around around the traps in terms of how he's viewed as a player with a lot of upside. Okay, but he's just not the finished product, and so he's not going to go in that top 10. Okay, so he is I would say that he could go anywhere between 15 to 25. I reckon around about that range.
I reckon he's probably. I reckon he might slip, Pete. I'm thinking 20. I'm thinking 20 to 30 is his go.
Yeah,
which is right now wheelhouse in that second round pick.
Yep, he absolutely could, and look, he could be in our wheelhouse for the Melbourne second round pick that we've got, depending on how that ends up. He could slip down there.
Yeah,
he'll go. Someone will pick him. He will be picked. It's going to be a matter of where, and it's because he's still a bit raw and unfinished. But he's had a really, really solid SNFL under 18 season. He consistently gets above 20 touches, 5 or 6 clearance, and he's leading that South team now that Roberts and Horn are both gone.
That's right. Yeah.
So he's now the main man. So he's actually getting some quite good exposure and experience in terms of being the main man. Okay.
Yeah.
So he missed a game through injury a week ago and got absolutely annihilated, which is unusual because they're quite a good side. But he was back. He was back for them against Centrals in the weekend and led them to a victory and 27 disposals and a number of clearances. And so he is now the heart and soul of that South under 18 team.
Yeah.
So he's getting really good experience in that sense, and there's no question that he'll be in the under 19 champs team. So he will be one of those. There'll be a group of midfielders looking for midfield time in those games, and no doubt he'll get a crack. So it's going to be really interesting that how he goes in the shadow of his teammates from down south.
Yeah, he's a very interesting prospect, and how they play him in the champs fascinates me because I'm not sure whether they'll run him in the midfield that much. I have a feeling they might use him as a bit of an X factor up forward, to be honest with you. And the reason why I say that is because of his overhead strength. He's quite good overhead. He's a really good size. And I reckon they might try and play him on the outside and maybe up forward a bit. I would like to see him get a run through the middle, though, because I think we need to see what he can do in that space, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that there's every chance, because he takes such a good mark up forward and because he's a regular goal kicker, there's every chance that they'll push him up forward.
Yeah.
And he's like the other two. He's a good size. He's 185.
Yeah.
And abouts. He's a really good size, and he'll be a real problem. He'll be a real problem for opposition team.
Yeah.
If you're picking him,
go on.
If you're drafting him, you've probably got a kid that you can play forward in that sort of half forward sort of, and you can actually gradually bring him into the midfield.
Yeah.
But don't be mistaken. He's got some tricks around the stoppage. He's got some real burst away from the stoppage.
Yeah.
He wins a lot of clearances, and so he's absolutely got midfield to his bow.
Yeah. Who would you like him to out of the current?
See, it's a hard one. Vardy Magic. No, I wouldn't think he's a Braden. Braden's a bit more outside, I think, than Arlo. Arlo's a real, as I said, he's a real clearance beast when he gets going. Whereas Braden's more of a wing half forward, I think.
Yeah.
Who do you remind? Oh, jeepers. It's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think myself whether there's
a comparison.
Yeah. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
He's got burst away from stoppage, and he's got tricks away from stoppage. I think that, if he's a kid that if you got him into your system and you gave him some time, he's a kid that has some X factor.
Yeah.
And his, that I love Matty Roberts, and Roberts will go much higher.
Yeah.
But if you were looking at ceiling, Arlo maybe has a higher ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah, Matty Roberts is your Rolls Royce. Arlo could be your Ferrari, but he could be your DeLorean as well. It's a bit like that, isn't it? For this particular one. Look, he's 185, midfielder forward, 2021 averages so far this season, 21 from the first 4 games anyway, 21.8 disposals, just under 13 kicks and 9 handballs, 4.3 marks, 4.3 tackles, 6 clearances, 3.5 inside midfield, inside 50s, and averaging 2 goals a game over the first 4 games. They're the kind of stats that make me wonder about his forward prowess. Maybe a little bit like the lad that that was touted at one stage last year as going number 1. Probably not the class, but Holland, similar kind of player, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably not I think that's not a bad comparison, Fane. That's a pretty good call. It's that kind of player that had some real forward craft. Matty Roberts can absolutely go forward and kick a goal. No question about that. He's a nice little strong overhead mark, and he'll kick you a goal. It's a beautiful kick. But I think Arlo's got some real forward craft, and I think that's why he tends to kick multiple goals pretty regularly. And to have an average of 6 clearances a game on top of your 2 goals a game, that's a pretty handy stat.
Well, particularly considering that he's now up against first and second ranked midfielders in the opposition team, whereas previously, as you mentioned, he had Roberts and that taking the primary spot. So, he's leading that team in the midfield now and still racking up those numbers. So it's really good to see. DLKJ2, thanks watching us on Twitch. Just mentioned that Channel 7 News have said that Collingwood have gotten cleared to play in South Australia. Sloane Rangers saying that they in the AFL have their decision to make on the ground still, so probably a bit to play out there. My gut feel is that lockdown, unfortunately for our Victorian listeners, might be extended a day or two, and that's going to play havoc with the schedule over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be going for a little while yet, and look, there's a lot of people suffering over there. But I guess we're talking about football. We're talking about the draft, and I'm interested to see how the NAB league over there copes with that when they've already missed a whole season last year, and hopefully they're not too affected this year with those boys and their draft year.
Well, it's a big point that you make, Peter, because those lads have missed out on the draft, and they haven't had an opportunity to apply their trade that much. And situation, if Victorian junior football is done over again like it was last year, that's really going to have a massive influence on lads' careers, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, because you got the champs as well, and so all of that stuff. I mean, last year our boys were in the spotlight because of that, and so hopefully that doesn't happen again. But if it does, well, we'll just have to, you just draft as best you can. But we need Labs is absolutely right. It's a really good point that he makes. We need those fit kids playing, so there's not always the spotlight on our kids, but also, we need to see, and I've made this. Finn, we've both made this very clear from the outset that we're being unashamedly parochial talking about our SA boys. But in terms of what Hamish is looking at, there'd be a whole lot of Victorian kids he's looking at, so that that may well suit our needs better, according to Hamish. So we need those Victorian boys up and running.
Yeah, and look, the reason why we're looking at SA lads is because they don't seem to get the coverage that the Victorians do, and we're very lucky, Pete, with your involvement at that level and your vision over that level. So, it's a great opportunity to showcase what is a really good crop of young players. Arlo certainly fits into that crop highly. He's the third of the 3 Musketeers at South Adelaide. Is there anyone else at South Adelaide we're going to be looking at over the next couple of months? Probably 1 or 2.
Not this year, but next year I'm a big G for Will Verrill, who's a big ruckman coming out of the South Under-18s. He's in his bottom age year. He'll be draftable next year, and some of the numbers, I haven't seen him play personally, but I have heard, and he could be, one of the great ruckmen of the AFL. I know that's a big call, but he's dominating under-18 at the moment, and he will he'll lead the ruck at the champs, without any shadow of a doubt. And I'm really interested to see how he goes in the champs, because some of the numbers that kid puts up, he is phenomenal with the amount of clearances he gets and this amount of possessions and the amount of hit outs. He just does it all.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's certainly one to
So
watch.
he's coming out of South. But we've got a few midfielders, but I reckon next week, just because we touched on him tonight, I'd really like to have a chat about Morgs next week, because he's certainly going to be in that top sort of 20 to 40. I think that I'm the same as you. I thought about it actually a couple of weeks ago, and it really struck me that I think there's a real hole for us. I think it's a real need.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have a look at Morgs as that third forward.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been brought about by Mcadam's just lack of development over the last 6 months. Just not giving us anything, and nothing really behind him, unfortunately. So very good, Peter. As always, very insightful and informative. Thank you for that. We have 1 or 2 minutes left. Everyone, if anyone wants to have a quick say before we wrap it up, now's the time. Peter, what you feel about the Collingwood game while we give those people a moment to collect themselves? I don't think we're going to have it all our own way.
Look, I'll just say this. Never, ever underestimate the Crows' ability or capacity to lose to Collingwood. Never, ever underestimate that.
True. Especially over here.
They are a team who has beaten us comfortably more times than any other team in the AFL. It is the worst record that we've got.
Yeah.
So they stand out alone in terms of how often they've beaten us since our inception.
Yeah.
So I would never ever tip us confidently against Collingwood. No, that said, I would be tipping us this weekend.
And they might have Stengel playing for them. If he gets picked up tomorrow, there's a bit of talk about Collingwood picking up Stengel.
Wouldn't that be funny?
That'd be quite interesting, wouldn't it? He'd probably torch us 2, kick half a dozen, and we'll go down by a point.
He'll kick one after the siren.
Yeah, that's right. Look, but like DLKJ says, no Cox, no Grundy, and a couple of others short as well. A midfielder that I've forgotten. They're going to be light on, but never underestimate the Maggies against us, as you said, especially Adelaide Oval. Look, mate, I think that
if we lose, I expect you to open the rap show with that line.
Yeah, I think I'll just record that little snippet, mate. Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord tonight. It's been great to have you all along on Discord and also on YouTube and Twitch as well. Really appreciated your company. Peter, thank you as always.
Thanks, mate.
We've done a nice sharp 50 minutes tonight, so look out for us again on the Weekend Wrap. Someone with J&M on the YouTube chat was saying, when are we on? We're on 7:30 Adelaide time, 7:30 Adelaide time on Sunday nights, and 8:30 Adelaide time on Tuesday nights, mate. So get around us. Thanks, everyone, as I said, and stay safe, and we'll see you on Sunday night. Good night, guys.
Cheers, guys.